Hey everybody, it's Coach Brian here with some 1.5 practice, more midpoint and distance work. So I'm just going to jump right into it. If you just watch the notes, then you have a really good idea of what we're actually working on here. We're just actually using the two formulas that we've learned, the one for distance and the one for midpoint. Those should be at the top of your notes. So I would maybe go ahead and jot them down somewhere on this paper, wherever you have open space, so that you can refer back to them. And every time that you write them down, it's another repetition towards memorizing them and learning them more fully. So I'm just going to work a few through here. There are only in total 8 questions, so I'm not going to do more than half of them. To get started, I'm just going to give you some help with number one. My advice to you on number one is that you have to go ahead and determine what the points are. So you can go ahead and letter them, name them whatever you want, but then you also need to figure out what they are. So this one's at 4, 4, and this one's over here at -7, -3. And so those will be the points that you use, and you're looking for their midpoint. So you're going to use the midpoint formula. Same thing for number 2, which I'll actually work out for us. It says find the midpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and just write that formula out here. And the midpoint formula, if you remember, is giving me a point. So when I get my final answer, I'm not going to have just a single number. I should have an ordered pair, an X, lagging a little bit, an X and a Y. And so I've got 2 points right here and right here. -4, -3, and 6, -5. Again, you can determine, unless the problem says otherwise, what you want each one to be. So I'm going to say that this is number 1 and this is number 2. That means this is X1, this is Y1, this is X2, this is Y2. And now I just need to take these values and plug them into the formula where they belong. So I've got X2, which is 6, plus -4 divided by 2. And then I've got Y2, which is -5, plus Y1, which is -3 over 2. And that's going to be my ordered pair that's right at the midpoint. So I've got 6 plus a negative number. Is just like subtraction. So I end up with 2 over 2. And then I've got -5 plus a -3. So I'm actually getting more negative. And then I divide both of these by 2. And I get 1, -4. And that is my midpoint. Jumping ahead here to 5, you are finding the length of the segment, which means I'm going to be using the distance formula. And it also says around to the nearest hundredth. So if you remember, I've got, ones, I've got tens, I've got hundreds, and then on the other side, I've got tenths and hundredths. So I am rounding to 2 decimal spots, 2 decimal places. All right, so now that I know how many decimal places I need and I know which formula I'm using, the distance formula, I need to actually get the information off the graph, which will be my points. So if you look, all right, I've got a point here at -2, +3, -2, +3. And then over here, I've got one at +4, -2, +4, -2. So those are the numbers I'll be working with. You can decide, sorry, it's all over the place. You can decide which one you want to be point number 1, which one you want to be point number 2. I'm just going to say that this one up here is number 1 and this one down here is number 2. Hopefully that works out for me. So I'm using the distance formula, and the distance formula is the square root. Let me fix that radical sign real quick. It's the square root of x2 minus x1. Another way to say that is the change in x squared plus the change in y squared. Still didn't make that radical sign long enough. That's okay. So again, I've already decided which one is 2 and which one is 1. So this is my x2, this is my y2, this is my x1, this is my y1. I'm just going to take those numbers and plug them into the formula to replace the existing placeholder. So x2 is 4. x1 is negative 2. So just to rewrite that, I've got 4 minus negative 2 squared plus, and then over here for my y2, I've got negative 2 minus y1, which is 3. So to rewrite that, negative 2 minus 3, I'm going to be squaring both of these and then finding the square root. All right, so 4 minus a negative 2. Minus a negative is the same thing as adding. So 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 squared is 36. Over here, negative 2 minus 3 more means I'm getting more negative, gives me negative 5. And negative 5 squared, negative times a negative, gives me a positive. Okay, gives me a positive. So I've got the square root of 36 plus 25. 36 plus 25 is 61. And the square root of 61 is 7.810. So I don't need to round this 1 up. I'm going to leave it as 7.81. Now, number 6 is looking for point M, which is a midpoint. 7 has you plot some points to form a triangle. That is a gigantic highlighter. Let me adjust that. To form a triangle, that's better. It tells you where A is located, it tells you where B is located, and C. And then it tells you straight up, use the distance formula. Okay, use the distance formula. And you're finding the length of each side, and then you're rounding to the nearest hundredth. And yeah, you gotta follow that order. So plot your points, create the triangle, find the length of each side, use that, rounded to the nearest hundredth to figure out what the lengths of AB, BC, and CD are. And then lastly, on number 8, it says that Charlie lives 4 miles away from school. He uses a coordinate plane as a map, and each little unit or each little block is a 1 mile by 1 mile plot. Which of the following points would be the location of the school if his house is located at 4, -3? So my advice for you for this would be create a plot, graph everything out, and then you're looking for a point. So you're probably going to be using midpoint formula, maybe a combination of midpoint and distance. I don't want to give too much away because I want to challenge you to do it. So as you work through your practice, if you need help, find me or your geometry teacher, if it's not me, and ask them for help. Talk to your group mates, ask them for help. Go back and watch the notes, and good luck as you're working through 1.5 practice.